Hi, I'm Susan with the Mother's Milk Bank of Western Great Lakes, and I'm here today with Molly Peterson of Peterson Lactation Services in the Milwaukee area, and we're going to talk about returning to work. I know that can be a really stressful topic, and it can be hard to know what to expect, but Molly has a great perspective on this as a working mom, so I want to hear what she has to say.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks so much for joining us, Molly.
Thank you. I can't wait to talk with you.
So let's start with mental health and the challenges of going back to work as a new mom.
Yeah.
What can we say about that or do about that, or what can we expect?
Yeah, I think really the biggest thing is going to be yourself some grace. It's a new thing for you to be separated from your baby. It's a new thing for your baby to be separated from you. And so, going into it knowing that there might be a lot of emotions, it's going to be a learning curve. The timing of things getting out the door in the morning might a little bit different. So allowing yourself, some time and some grace to kind of regroup and know that, you might feel some things. I know the first time I dropped Ella off with a good friend of mine to watch her, I cried on the way to work, and it's okay to be sad. But obviously knowing that they're being taken care of and in a safe place, that's the most important thing.
I too have cried on the way to work after dropping off a child.
It's
Um,
hard. It's so
it's
hard.
hard. It's definitely hard. And I think it's important. I think you bring up a good point, remembering that it's new for baby too. They've never been separated from you like this before either. So it's a learning curve for both mom and baby.
Yeah, and I
It's
found that
important
like
to know.
starting, if you normally work like Monday through Friday, maybe having your first day back at work be on a Thursday or a Friday. That way the week is shorter and you don't have to, go just, jump right in the deep end. You can kind of dip your toe in a little bit first, and that might be helpful.
So once you are, thinking about going back at work, how can you prepare for the potential that you will likely have to, if you're a breastfeeding mom, you will likely have to pump at work? What do you have to plan for? Should you talk to your boss? Should you talk to HR ahead of time before you go back? How can you navigate that?
Yeah, I would definitely have a conversation with them just to let them know what your needs are. In the state of Wisconsin, are covered to have pump breaks that don't have to be, only your lunch break, like you're required to get time to pump, and a place to pump. That's not the bathroom. It has to be a door that locks. And so having that conversation ahead of time, just so you can lay out what your needs are and they can kind of work on maybe setting up a space for you, telling your coworkers like, hey, we're going to put Molly in the conference room because it's the only door that locks. She's going to have a little sign on the door. So if it, is there, please don't barge in on her while she's trying to express milk for her baby. She's already stressed enough trying to like make this work, like let her be. So you don't have to give too many details, but I would say, I need to be pumping at this time and this time, and I need a place and I need an outlet and I need those dedicated breaks for myself.
So on that subject, how often should you be pumping at work? Let's say you're going back to work. I think most of us go back sometime between 6 and 12 weeks, which is not fantastic, but that's what we're working with
What
right
we
now in the
got,
United
right?
States, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is going to be frequent removal of milk for breastfeeding parents. I always like to work backwards. So if I'm working with a mom and she is working like a typical day, let's say 9 to 5, and she knows that she can nurse her baby 2 times before they leave, maybe right when they wake up and then right before they get dropped off at daycare or grandma's house or whoever's watching. And she knows that she can pump 3 more times when she is, reunited with baby. So right when they get picked up, maybe around dinner time, and then once before bed. Knowing that you've got that like 5 or 6 times a day that you can nurse your baby, that means you're going to want to pump twice at work. The biggest thing is making sure, once we're past that like 6 to 8 week point, that your breast are being frequently stimulated and drained at least 7 times in a 24-hour period. So try to work backwards and say, I know I can nurse my baby X amount of times, let's say 5, just for an number. That means I need to be pumping twice while I'm at work. That duration of pumping or duration of time in between the pumping sessions is not as important as that total number of breast drainages throughout the day.
Okay. And so what do you do if you are going back to work and you don't have milk for that first day? When should you start planning for like a freezer stash or milk for that first day? What do you suggest as far as when to start
Yeah,
pumping,
great question.
knowing that you're going to be going back to work?
Yeah, I always tell parents that, Instagram makes it look like we need this freezer full of milk right You don't need that much milk for going back to work. You only need enough milk for that first day, and then that day you'll pump for the next day, and so on and so forth. So I usually say, if you can hold off until at least 1 month postpartum before you start incorporating the pump, that just helps you kind of get used to taking care of a new person and yourself, and kind of get breastfeeding off to a good start before you start incorporating another thing that you have to do. So if you're going back at 6 weeks, let's say, that gives you 2 weeks of pumping maybe once a day, just to get a little bit of a freezer stash going. And again, you only need enough milk for that first day. And a good rule of thumb is leaving about 1 ounce per hour that you're separated. So if you work a typical 8-hour day, I would suggest leaving 8 to 10 ounces of milk, just so you've got a little extra cover just in case traffic's bad or something like that. So that's only, maybe 3 4-ounce bottles or 3 3-ounce bottles that you can kind of incorporate throughout the couple weeks leading up to going back to work. So if you're not going back till 12 weeks, then don't worry about it on the month. You can start pumping at 6 or 8 weeks postpartum and kind of give yourself that little bit of a break. I think most parents like to have just maybe a couple days saved up in the freezer just to kind of take the pressure off. So you waiting until about a month or so postpartum, or at least until breastfeeding is kind of well established and going well, then start incorporating the pump maybe once, maybe twice a day. You'll have a beautiful little freezer stash. Again, not going to be a full freezer like Instagram shows, but a good little freezer stash for yourself for going back to work.
That's fantastic advice. I think with those hours that you're going to be away, the 1 ounce per hour, we have to keep in mind the commute as well, right?
Sure.
So if you have an hour long commute to work, but your workday is only 8 hours, you need to actually plan for that 10 hours, all
If
of
you
that
can
time.
even have a quick nursing session right when you pick baby up, that way, you can kind of reconnect. So that would be, scheduling that last pumping session while you're at work a couple hours before you're going to be, reuniting with your baby. That way they have, you're ready to feed, maybe have the daycare hold off on giving them, an extra bottle. So that way they're hungry when you get to get back together, and you can kind of reunite right when you pick them up.
So what happens when you're running into a situation where either the daycare provider or the family member at home or the friend is telling you it's not enough, you're not leaving enough? Do you have any tips about how to appropriately manage feeding expectations while mom's at work?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, you are your baby's expert. You know exactly what they need to eat. And if you're running into some trouble with whoever's watching your baby thinking that maybe it not be enough, I would recommend making sure that they're pacing the feeds. Paced bottle feeding is really important for breastfed baby, well, for any baby, but really for breastfed babies, because we want to make sure that we're not overfeeding. It's really easy to overfeed with the bottle, and so that means that daycare provider is going to think that they need more because they just ate. They're going to be hungry again. So really making sure that they're being paced with their feeds. And I can kind of show you what that looks like if that's okay.
Yes.
So generally we think of, if you watch a movie, bottle feeding the babies kind of like this, and they're lying back and it's like a beer funnel coming at them, but they don't have to work very hard when they're doing this. It just kind of pours out even with a slow full nipple like this one. So instead what we would recommend is kind of sit them upright a little bit more and keep that bottle pretty horizontal. Keep it tilted so there's always milk in the nipple. It's just going to prevent a lot of air intake. But in this position now, they're in control of that feeding just like they are when they're at the breast. So you're going to be able to kind of manage what that amount of food that they're eating is. They can kind of control it a little bit more, take pauses and breaks instead of like this where they're feeling like they have to like suck it all down really quickly to be able to keep up with that flow. So if the daycare provider is concerned about the volume of milk, there's a lot of great research out there and resources that show most breastfed babies take between 3.5 and 4.5 ounces per feeding at most. Some babies are snackers and they like to take smaller meals, and that's okay. But you kind of pre-portioning the bottles to say, this is how much they should be getting at every single feed. This is how often I want them to be getting, kind of setting them up with the schedule, and then showing them how to pace bottle feed. If they have to feed lots of babies in the room, sometimes they're trying to do things a little bit quicker. So making sure that they're familiar with the paced bottle feeding technique is going to help ensure that your baby is being fed an appropriate amount.
How can a mom really make the most of each pumping session?
Making sure that you are using the correct size is not only going to help with your output, but it's also going to help with comfort. So making sure that is correct is the first place to start. If you're working with a lactation consultant, bring your pump in, have them show you how to use it, have them fit you for the flanges. We have these like little handy dandy little nipple sizers. We start with that. We kind of get a general idea of the size. Then we, kind of play with the different sizes, see what it looks like, and have you pump and make sure that it's comfortable, make sure your output's good. We have so many moms who are using an incorrect size. I would say 90% of the time, a 24 millimeter flange is going to be way too big. And so having, a pumping session done before you go back to work can be really helpful. And also lubricating the flanges. Take a little coconut oil or olive oil and lubricate the inside where your nipple is going to be touching. Nipple on plastic doesn't always jive, so giving them a little bit of lubrication can be really helpful. And then looking at pictures of your baby, videos of your baby, anything that will help stimulate that oxytocin, that love hormone that we want to be flowing, is going to be really helpful too. You can also warm up the flanges, like under warm water or, wherever you can warm things up, or you get like little warmers that you can use that also is going to help with that oxytocin release. And if you're really stressed, sometimes even taking like a baby sock and putting it over the bottle so you can't see that output. Stress inhibits lactation. So if you're sitting there like, please, one more ounce, it might limit what you get. So, don't even pay attention to what, the output is while you're pumping. Distract yourself by looking at those little baby pictures. And then doing hands-on pumping. What that means is, let's say we've got the flange here, I'm pumping, but I'm also gently massaging while I'm going. You can get a hands-free pumping bra, so you can kind of massage at the same time. Really gentle strokes, gentle squeezes, but research shows that hands-on pumping increases your output by about 25%, which is huge.
Enormous,
so if you can, do all of those things to help maximize your pumping sessions, great.
I wish I had had this conversation with you prior to having my first baby, because this is exactly what it took me 5 kids to learn.
Oh man.
So
I'm glad you figured it out. That's great.
Eventually, yeah, a career in lactation and 5 children later, I finally figured it out. But yes,
I love it. This is great.
so if you have a workplace with a lot of different people in it, how do you store your milk in that setting?
Yeah.
What's the best way to store your milk?
You can always store, you don't want to put it in the fridge, but if there's a lot going on, having a cooler pack like that's in your pumping bag with you is a really great place to start. That way, no one's going to use it as their coffee creamer or anything like that. I definitely would label it with your name and this is Molly's breast milk and don't drink it with your coffee. Combining the milk that you pump throughout the day can also be really helpful. So you don't have multiple bottles in your pumping bag, in your cooler bag, that you're trying to manage. So combining the milk, so it's got one bottle with all of the milk in it throughout the day can be really helpful. And it's good in a cooler pack for up to 24 hours. So it'll get you from, being able to get to work and get home again, and, still be effectively cooled. And you can also keep on the counter for up to about 4 hours or so, as long as the room is less than 80 degrees. So if you work like a half day and you don't want to put it in the fridge, you can just put it right back in your pump bag, and then take it home with you and pop it in the fridge from there.
When does it end, right? When do you get to stop pumping at work? Because the newborn phase can feel so daunting. And then going back to work on top of that, because we're going back so early, it can be really challenging to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So when do we get to stop pumping at work?
I think that for every single person who's pumping at work, it has to be doable for you. And if that means, we all know about the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization recommendations, but it has to be doable for your mental health. Like we talked about early on, it's so much more important for a baby to have a healthy mom. So doing it as long as you can is great. But, about a year or so postpartum, you probably can start weaning yourself off the pump, if not even sooner than that. Once your baby starts solids and kind of gets the hang of that, you're not going to need to be, pumping as frequently. So discontinuing it at that point is great. Most providers are really great about, if you're continuing to pump and nurse, past that year mark, great. If that's working for you, amazing. But you got to do what works for you and make it sustainable.
I know Wisconsin has a fabulous lactation community, as does Illinois. So if you are struggling with the idea of going back to work, or you've gone back to work and then you find yourself struggling, please reach out to a local lactation provider, because there's tons that are ready and willing and able to help you through that challenging time.
For sure.
So obviously talk to your healthcare provider too, any doctors. But really for back to work pumping needs, I think it's best to talk to your lactation provider
And if
and get that specific specialized sort of support. For
you
more information, if you want to talk to Molly, she's available at petersonlactationservices.com. Or if you happen to have enough milk to donate or you find yourself in need of donor milk, you can visit us at milkbankwgl.org. We serve all of Wisconsin and Illinois, and we are happy to be here.
Yay.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Molly.
you guys. Have a great day.
You too.